Morning, everybody. Councillors, members of the public, city staff, I think we're ready to begin. Before I do so, I'd like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Ashwaubenon, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis people, and also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. My apologies if I mispronounced any of those tribes. So what we're going to do first is we're going to run through non-timed items, starting at item 7. That's actually my ward, Ward 6, and I will move the staff recommendations with an amendment to go along with it. Sure. Yep, I'd be happy to. Preliminary report, zoning bylaw amendment, rental housing demolition, conversion applications, 1277 Wilson Avenue. No, there's no. And we're good to go, and there's a technical staff amendment to go with what's in the report. No. Distribution?
So we don't have to move an expanded notice motion anymore? I didn't get this memo.
Perhaps the planning director can explain the recommendations.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you notice the recommendations on the preliminary reports, the template has been changed to have a standard recommendation that will capture any requested expanded notification area that the local councillor is requesting. So there will be no need to move a motion to identify the expanded area. All that will be required is the councillor provide the planner with the extended notice areas that they want.
All right. Councillor Menawong, was that satisfactory?
Yeah, I just thought that
Yeah, no, and we... Yes, no, the chair and the vice chair were fully aware of the new policies. Thank you for the reminder. So, item 2.7, I'll move the recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 2.8, preliminary report, zoning amendment application, 25 Fisherville Road. That is also Ward 6. I would be happy to move the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 2.9, preliminary report, zoning bylaw amendment and rental housing demolition conversion applications, 831, 833, 837 Glencairn Avenue, 278, 280, and 282 Hillmount. Councillor Cole, what would you like to do with that?
I'll move
Staff recommendations are moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 2.10, preliminary report, zoning amendment application 11 to 19, 25, 29 Industrial Street. That is Councillor Robinson. Should we hold that down? Or has anyone been given his? Yes. Has any councillors been given instructions on what to do with that item, or will we hold it down? Yeah. I'd be prepared to move it, or... Yeah. Okay, well, councillors, why don't we move it, and if Councillor Robinson has any concerns with it, we can reopen. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next one, item 11, preliminary report, zoning amendment application, 154 Wicksteed Avenue, also Councillor Robinson. Be prepared to community consultation. I'd be prepared to move it on her behalf. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 12, Councillor Fillion, what would you like to do? Preliminary report, official plan amendment and zoning amendment application, 179, 181 Finch Avenue East.
I have a referral motion that the preliminary report be referred back to staff so that the applicant has an opportunity to revise their application to fit with the Central Finch Avenue secondary plan.
Okay. This is referred back to staff. Okay, it's a referral motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 13, preliminary zoning amendment application, 241, 243 Finch Avenue East. Councillor Fillion.
I'll move staff recommendations.
Staff recommendations moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 14,
Staff recommendation.
preliminary report, zoning amendment application 272, 276, 278 Finch Avenue East, 48 Winlock Park, and 40 Manor Crest Park Drive. And the staff recommendations have been moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 15, parking amendments, McAllister Road. That is Ward 6, my ward. I'd be happy to move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 16, speed limit reduction, Garthdale Court. That is also my ward, Ward 6. I'd be happy to move staff recommendations as well. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 17, Always Stop Control, Bainbridge and Harlock, and I am moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 18, removal of accessible parking space, Elm Road. That is Councillor Cole. Recommendations moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 19, removal of accessible loading zone, Rosewell Avenue, Councillor Cole. Deputations? They're not on the deputation list. You can hold it down still.
No, it's okay, I'll move staff.
Okay, staff report moved. That's item 19, removal of accessible loading zone, Rosewell Avenue. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 20, traffic calming, Melrose Avenue. Councillor Cole?
I'm very happy to move that staff recommendation.
Staff recommendations moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 21, speed hump poll results, Hogs Hollow neighborhood. We're going to hold it down for speakers?
Should hold that one.
Yes, that is held. Item 22, speed limit reduction, Sweeney Drive. Councillor Menawong moves to staff recommendations. All those in favor? I did not. Before we proceed any further, does anyone have any declared interest in any of the items on the agenda today? No? Okay. Item 23. Request to implement drive-through restrictions at Swift Drive and Eglinton Avenue. Councillor Menawong. You're holding this? Item 24. VIAs, including, one of the VIAs is Councillor Peruse. Is that correct? That's corrected? Okay. Item 24, appointments to Business Improvement Area Boards of Management. That's actually Councillor Cole, myself, and Councillor Robinson. Councillor Cole, would you like to move the nominees?
I move the nominees, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, we're going to go to timed items now. Item, I can wait 11 seconds. Councillor Cole, your item is coming up. Item 2.1, and we do have we have a short gap between 2.1. If I could have a motion to confirm the minutes of December the 11th, meeting of December the 11th, 2018. Councillor Manor Wong, all those in favor? Carried. And we can go to our we have deputants for item 2.1, final report, rental housing demolition application under Chapter 667 of the Toronto Municipal Board, 3636 Bathurst Street. Jody Cates?
Good morning, councillors. My name is Jody Katz, and I reside at 149 Bannockburn, which is the direct neighbor to 3636 Bathurst Street. And I wanted to understand, first of all, what the actual demolition would incur. And I have some examples as to why I'm here. It's specifically with regards to the garbage that continuously piles up, and I end up becoming the recipient of said garbage. And it concerns me that if there's going to be severe demolition, there will be severe garbage. And I just want to make sure that this particular building is going to do due diligence in cleaning up every single day. I have a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old, and oftentimes we are picking up lots of garbage in our front yard because there's a very thin border between their property and my property, a tree line which we put up ourselves. So I would just like to understand what the results will be of said demolition. And I have photos to prove some of the garbage and what my house looks like in relation to 3636.
Well, no, thank you. Your deputation is done?
Yes.
Yeah. So I believe the applicant is also asked to depute, so maybe they can give you the assurances you need that there'll be a new solid waste strategy on the site.
Who are they, and where can I meet with them and speak with them?
Well, you have to work through your local councillor. Councillor Cole, I'm sure, would be happy to consult with the residents regarding a waste management problem in the area.
It's specifically this particular building and my particular property. I can't speak to the rest of the street. I can only speak to my property because I border this property.
It's an important issue, and your comments are very important, but it's not something we can solve in this forum. It's something that has to be solved at the local level between residents and the management of the building.
So,
And
Mr.
your
Yeah.
city councillor would be happy to.
I'm going to be asking questions of staff because I don't see the demolition conditions in here. I think I'm missing them, so maybe we can solve it through staff.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, questions for the deputy? Sure, Councillor Cole.
Thank you. Have you contacted property standards about this in the city? Making complaint about the garbage on the property from the building next door?
I have not. They tend to clean up more or less eventually. I have tried to speak to the property management. It's very hard to figure out even who they are. However, this is specifically concerning the fact that there's going to be demolition happening now, and there will be copious amounts of garbage, I can only imagine. And it's not even so much that someone's not physically picking up the garbage, it's that, and I'm happy to show you the photos that I've brought, it's that there are large garbage bins that are blown open and stuff flies, and it inevitably flies into my property. That is the concern, and now with demolition, there's going to be, I'm sure, many more garbage bins and much more garbage and much more wind flying into my building, into my property. Therefore, I want to understand what their management will be with relation to this specific project.
Yeah, and that's why I ask whether or not we have any record of.
I do not, because it hasn't been so horrific. But I have a feeling it will become quite.
So you haven't contacted 311 about?
I have not.
Okay, so what we'll do is we will be asking the applicant about the plan that they have during demolition in terms of garbage, the impact on your property. And then I can meet with you afterwards, going forward, that we monitor it too, on top of that. And then in the future, if you have any, even there, before the demolition starts, if you would call my office or call 311, we could also deal with that immediate situation that you've raised.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jessica Smuskowitz, Sherman Brown. Thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of Community Council. I am Jessica Smuskowitz from Madam Brown's office here on behalf of the applicant. I have heard Ms. Cass's concerns. This was the first we've heard about, well, I've heard about this garbage issue. Our client has undertaken to a construction management process. When they get to the stage of construction, they still are in the site plan approval process, so we're not quite there yet. But I have heard the concerns. I will speak to our client, and we will work with the local residents, with Councillor Cole's office, and city staff as necessary to manage the construction process as best we can. We are here in full support of the staff recommendations. It's been a fulsome process that started with our client's rezoning application in 2011, and we've really worked cooperatively with city staff, planning policy staff, that resulted in city staff support and council support of our client's rezoning application. There was a small technical engineering issue, which is why it went to the Ontario Municipal Board, now LPAD, but that was resolved again through the cooperation of city staff. So subject to any questions you may have, that's all I have to say, and we are again in support of the staff recommendations.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? No? Thank you very much. Questions to staff? Staff to the floor? Councillor Carroll?
Thank you. So to the issue of demolition waste, am I missing it in the report? There's a lot of focus on the rental relocation and such, but I'm guessing that the reason there isn't a lot about site conditions during demolition and post-demolition because the intent is to start building right away, but have all the conditions and rules regarding waste on the site and clearing the site, et cetera, and construction management, have all those been worked out in to a final stage?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the construction management plan will be associated with the site plan approvals, which are underway, and the zoning was approved by the board, but the construction management plan will be handled through the site plan application. So any details with regards to controlling dust, construction activity, truck routing, demolition, garbage disposal will be handled through the construction management plan, which will have to be approved by the city.
Is that a change? Because in the past, right in the demolition order, because this is just the demolition order, and in the past, we would see various, disciplinary requirements around just the demolition waste. So is it new that we won't see them in print until the construction management and final site plan approval?
Through you, Mr. Chair, ordinarily with regards to rental housing demolition and replacement, which is the report before you today, they don't ordinarily have conditions like that because they're covered through the development review process and the construction management plan. I think what you're referring to is occasionally you'll have a demolition report come forward here in advance of a development application when someone's demolishing
Yeah.
a derelict old home and there's no development application associated with it. And then when we approve those standalone demolitions, there's other conditions with regards to debris and fixing up the site and adding sod and that sort of thing. So that's a different situation.
So today, we're just looking at the rental housing demolition application. They're just getting permission to be allowed to take away rental units and showing us
Yeah,
how they're
demolish.
going to replace them.
Yeah, correct.
Is there a way that we can make a stylistic change in the future that the residents in the neighborhood reading this would actually read the sentence, control of demolition waste and conditions surrounding the act of demolition will be included in a future report, blah, blah, blah?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we could take that back to senior management between city planning and
Yeah.
buildings to explore that opportunity, because those other situations that you're referring to are reports usually brought forward by buildings division
Yeah.
that have those conditions. So we can maybe speak to buildings divisions and see if some of those conditions can be injected into our reports for these type of.
Or just a sentence that refers to where you will see those, so that, it seems like the deputy has come here just because that was missing from this report at this juncture. So if there was some way to just include in the content, you will see that later, don't worry.
We could
sort
take that
sort
back
of
to
thing.
consideration.
Yeah, I don't need to move a motion, you could just take it as an undertaking. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other questions for staff? Speakers? Councillor Cole, would you like to move the recommendations? Okay. Staff report moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 2.2, final report, draft plan, common elements condominium application and part lot control exemption application, 3052 Bayview Avenue. Councillor Fillion. It's 2.2, 3052 Bayview Avenue. There's no deputants for this item. Staff recommendation is moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. It is 3 minutes to the next timed item, which is Board 6, which is mine. What I'll do is there's some walk-on motions. If we could get the approvals to have those distributed. Item NY 30, NY 2.30, memo from Councillor Robinson regarding speed limit reduction on Fenn Avenue. Councillor Robinson, would you like to?
Please?
It's not placed, it's
Just to introduce it?
just introduction now and then
Oh,
distributed.
well, it's simply just exactly what you said. Request to reduce the speed limit to 40 on Fenn Avenue. We're observing very high levels of volume plus speeding, and we'd like to reduce that.
All right, well, let's just move to introduce. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried.
One step at a time.
Item 31, memo from myself regarding parking restriction on Bainbridge Avenue. I'd like to introduce it. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 32, also my item, request for city solicitor to attend the Toronto local appeal body. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 33, from Councillor Fillion regarding representation at the Toronto local appeal body for 37 Stafford Road. Councillor Fillion, you'd like to move that for introduction? That is moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 34, Also from Councillor Fillion regarding representation of the Toronto Local Appeal Body for 122 Elmwood Avenue. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 35, also from Councillor Fillion regarding representation of the Toronto Local Appeal Body for 223, 225 Northwood Drive. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So those will be distributed, and we'll deal with them later. Back to timed item. Item 3, final report rental housing demolition application under Municipal Code 667, 847, 849, 851, 853, 855, 857, 859. Consider them read. This is a row of bungalows that are falling apart. We are very anxious to get them demolished because of a safety issue. I do have a technical amendment on this item as well, which has been distributed, or we can put it on the screen. We'll put it on the screen, drafted by staff. And then I'll take it as a package. I'll move the recommendations as amended. Suspense is killing me. Thank you. Okay, so there's a technical glitch. It can't be put on the screen. If councillors feel more comfortable, we can have a hard copy version distributed. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is a technical amendment drafted by staff. It goes with item 2.3. Not exactly a barn burner. I hope everyone's okay with it. We can bring staff to the floor if there's confusion. Go anywhere in the building. The replacement units. I don't know what the reason is. Staff to the floor. Councillor Carroll?
So just a quick question. I'm just wondering why they were required to be on the ground floor in the first place. Is the fact that they're no longer required because the tenants whose units are being replaced no longer are in tenancy?
Through you, the chair, the units were never required to be on the ground floor. There was just a discrepancy in the plans that were submitted to staff where we assumed that they were on the ground floor, but in fact, there are some units on the ground floor, some units that are not on the ground floor.
Oh,
But they're still in a group of 6 or more units, yeah,
right.
or contiguous, yeah.
But it's not an issue of changing the wishes of,
No.
of existing tenants. Okay, thanks. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other questions for staff? Any other speakers? I would take it as a package. I would move the recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, 2.4, final report zoning bylaw amendment, 4841, 4881 Yonge Street, 2 and 50 Sheppard Avenue East, 246 Forest Laneway. I don't see any deputants on this item. Is anyone here to speak to this item? Councillor Fillion?
As it's just a technical matter, I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay. Staff recommendations are being moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We're a little ahead for our 10:15. The additional items, so we could technically deal with those. Has everyone had a chance to read and study them thoroughly in the 3 minutes that you've had them? Let's just do them. Councillor Robinson, speed limit reduction on Fenn Avenue. It's reducing the speed from 50 to 40 kilometers on Fenn Avenue between York Mills Road and south end of Fenn Avenue. Would you like to move the recommendations?
Yeah, yeah, and just so everybody knows, north of York Mills Road, Fenn already is signed as 40K. So it's actually just making the speed limit consistent throughout the street. And we've had a lot of feedback from the residents on that street, including the mayor's offices. They've reached out to the mayor's office as well.
Gosh, the mayor's involved in this? Okay.
Indeed,
Yes,
he is.
so is that your speech? Yes?
That was it. I thought it was
So-
riveting.
Yeah, no, it was very moving speech. Councillor Menawang, you also want to speak on this item?
Our first meeting off on the wrong foot within the context of, our usual practice is to refer speed limit reductions to staff and ask for a report, making sure that we're doing the right thing. So I just think that if we start this practice, councillors are going to come in, ask for speed limit reductions without any comment from staff to justify the reduction. So I would just like to see a supportive report from staff that says that there are no other issues involved that we need to consider before we do this. Because then, what will happen is there'll be another one, and another one, and another one, and we'll be reducing speed limits all across the city without the advice of our transportation staff. So, I mean, if staff want to come back and bring it back, I'm fine with that and support it. And if the staff say that it's fine, I'm happy to support it as well.
Are you moving
I'm going to
referral back to staff?
Defer
Or
for report back to staff on this item.
okay, Councillor Carroll would like to speak to the referral motion.
Yeah, I'm going to speak against the referral, but in this case, what I heard the councillor tell us is that this is one of those cases that I think we're going to see a lot of, and I don't want to gum up staff in this case. This is a road that has portions that have already been reduced, and I am overjoyed to hear that we're going to just say, let's make the whole stretch 40. And if it were 30, I would be 100% going along with Councillor Minnan-Wong's concerns, because that is a big change, and that does require a level of community consultation that we have no assurance has happened if we don't go with the staff report. But where it's a case that 40 has already been implemented and the issue is consistency and the ability to enforce, and we're simply addressing the consistency, I'm prepared to make the leap as a political motion, and so that's what I'm going to be looking forward to going forward. If we're making a big change to a speed limit and there is no not even any portion, I'll be saying, hey, Councillor, go get a report. But in this particular instance, I don't think I need that extra step. Thank you.
Can I just speak to the councillor's motion?
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
So I 100% agree with Councillor Menon Wong. He's absolutely right. But Councillor Carroll just identified why I'm doing this. Also, I think it's partially because of the election and the gap in community council meetings. And this street has been very anxious about this issue, so much that they reached out to the mayor himself. But we were trying to look at measures to address the issues on the street. This particular street doesn't actually want to go the route of speed humps or bumps, whatever they're called, but they would like to look at any measures that we can put in place quickly to curb some of the speeding. So I think he is absolutely right. On the other hand, we've had a huge gap in our community council meetings, and there's a problem on this street because of its proximity to York Mills, and it's making it consistent. So that's the only reason I'm bringing it forward, but I appreciate his comments.
Sorry,
You
just
spoke
know
already.
very quickly. I'm still going to vote for my deferral only within the context of, as I was thinking of this, I want to make an educated decision. I don't even have a map. I don't even know where the street is. So Councillor Carroll may know, other councillors may know. I don't have a map to make a decision. And so, just the very basic things that we need to make a decision. So I'm not going to vote for the approval of it because I don't have enough information.
All right,
And
well-
if we were to just go from what, exclusively what residents wanted, then, I think we'd be going down a bad path.
All right, any other speakers? No? So let's bring this to a vote.
Referral comes first.
The first vote is on referral. Back to staff for a report and a study. All those in favor? Opposed? That's defeated. On the item itself, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 31 is Ward 6. This is to correct a sign that was, a parking restriction sign that was put too far west last year. No fault of staff, but this is sort of a technical motion to put the sign in its proper spot. I don't think, there's no staff report. Originally there was, I believe, a healthy debate on this. This is just to move a post a little further east to correct a mistake that was made. Any speakers on the matter? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 32, 777 Wilson Heights Boulevard, request for city solicitor to attend at the Toronto Local Appeal Body. All those in favor? Sure. Questions to staff? Councillor Carroll.
I just wanted to ask a quick question because we have a couple of motions for sending folks to the local appeal body. This first one asks for outside consultants as necessary. And I'm just wondering if staff can comment, is that a difficult request? Are we having an easy time or a difficult time getting outside consultants to take these cases on? And is there value added? Is there a case for the outside consultants?
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, we use outside consultants for, depending on the circumstances. If our planning staff does not support something, then, and there's a direction by council, then we do try to get outside consultants. It depends on how strong or weak our case is, usually. That is to say, if we have a weak planning case, it may be difficult to get an independent planner or engineer or architect. If we have a strong case, or for other reasons other than planning staff not supporting the recommendation, then we do use consultants and we try to obtain the best. We use the same consultants that the developers use. It's just a matter depending on the circumstances.
Would it be reasonable to ask, because we're in a new realm, we've got our Toronto local appeal body, we're heading into LPATs, would it be reasonable, or maybe it's already scheduled, at a certain point with these new systems, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, to have a report back that looks at how we're doing in terms of in-house, outside, how easy is it, how is the outside consultant and legal community responding to the new system? Would that be a report that would be a reasonable thing to ask, just so that the councillors and community planners have a sense of that after a year or two of the new practices?
If I understand what you're saying that if we hire outside consultants and we look at the win-loss record, then it may be a report card on council's actions.
Well, I'm not looking at the win-loss. I mean, how are they taking to the new system, i.e., if we're asking for outside consultants in what is standard wording, and we're just moving them, but behind the scenes, over time, we start to find we're having a great deal of difficulty finding outside consultants that want to take the cases, then that's what I'm looking at. Not win-losses, but the ability and how much time is being spent procuring those outside consultants.
I think I understand your question. The situation is this, as everybody probably knows, the OMB was dissolved, and we have LPAT, Local Planning Appeal Tribunal.
Yeah, that's the reason I'm asking, yeah.
The entire legal community, the planning community, and all the experts who were used to the OMB, we're now into a brand-new world, and we're feeling our way along, and I have no doubt that between planning and legal, that there will be reports forthcoming. At this stage, there hasn't been one case that's finally gone to the end. So it's going to take some time, especially when we're now booking hearings for 2020. So it may take some time to sort of get enough data to have a meaningful report.
Oh, okay, so it might be something we want to wait 2 or 3 years. Okay, okay.
Maybe.
Right. Okay, thank you. I just wonder, I can release and adopt, vote for the recommendation.
Councillor Carroll is moving the recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 33, Councillor Fillion, representation of the Toronto Local Appeal Body for 37 Stafford Road.
I'll move it, and just kind of in light of what Councillor Carroll was saying, in this, it's fairly standard wording to say outside consultants. So in this case, staff were opposed to the application, so we would not need an outside consultant. And in cases where it's the reverse, which sometimes happens, if the legal staff advise me that they can't find an outside planner, I will tell the residents, unfortunately, we have no case here and we should not proceed. So certainly in the ones in my ward, we would rarely, if ever, I think one time we just sent a lawyer on a fairly technical matter, but if we can't find a planning witness, then we don't proceed. And, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Fillion. You're moving the recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 34, representation Toronto Local Appeal Body for 122 Elmwood. Councillor Fillion, did you want to move the recommendation? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 35, representation of the Toronto Local Appeal Body for 223 and 225 Northwood Drive. Councillor Fillion? That is moved. All those in favor? That is opposed. That is carried. We're back to our 10:15 item. Item 2.5, request for directions report. zoning amendment 3019 Dufferin Street. Councillor Cole. We do have speakers on this item. Bruno Pacelio. Oh, for Fortunato Petrola? Thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Fortunato Petrola, and I live on 28 Clever, just next door to Dufferin Street, 3019 to 3019. My concern is for the impact of my property and parking, air conditioning, trafficking, and more concern about balcony. Now, my concern is about building an 8-story building, and by law now we have a 3 stories building, and I don't think it's fair to build 8 stories beside my house, because it really kill our property, man. We can do nothing in the backyard anymore. That's it. I guess that's what it is. That's my problem is because 8-story high is too high, and it's not fair. I live next door, and to be so high and having no privacy, the air is going to be bad, pollution, traffic, and everything. And the balcony is the bad thing too, to face my side. Going to be a lot of problem there with the people there in the balcony.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bruno Pacelio?
Council. My name is Bruno Piccillo. I head the organization Dufferin Eglinton Community Group Incorporated. It's a group that operates around this development, 3019, all the way down to Eglinton, basically from Lawrence to Eglinton. And we're very much affected by what goes on this stretch of what's going to be known as Dufferin Avenue eventually. Now, this stretch of Dufferin Street from Lawrence to Eglinton has no study. No study has been done on this future avenue. There's a study that's been done on the north side from Lawrence to the 401, but no study has been done here. So we really don't know what's going on this stretch. The planning department is assuming that the land use north of Lawrence will be the same as the south of Lawrence. And it is not. This is what we're trying to find out as a community, whether this stretch of the Dufferin Street has the same land use as the north. If not, then we need to proceed accordingly. So we, the community surrounding the development 3019, are not satisfied that the proposed development will not have a negative impacts on the rest of the Dufferin Avenue from Lawrence Avenue to Eglinton Avenue. We are at odds with the conclusions drawn from the report that states otherwise. How can we conclude this without a study on this section? We demand that the study be done on this stretch of Dufferin Avenue to incorporate community concerns about any future development, specifically as it regards to massing, built form, landscape, land use, impact on services, and infrastructure. We are at odds with the planning department on these issues that while the official plan states that no development is to go ahead prior to an avenue study, if the development is deemed to have negative impacts down the road and set negative precedents. The planning department seems to have a positive outlook on this development and gives it the green light, even though an avenue study has not been done. We, the communities around this development, disagree with this. This development will set negative precedents, specifically in terms of height, mass, and built form. So the area south of Lawrence needs an avenue study in order to do this right. We propose then that someone here on council move a motion to council to reiterate what Josh Collett, the previous councillor, already put forth to this council on July 23rd, 2018. This is what he said, and I quote, City Council requests the Chief Planner and Executive Director, City Planning, to consider adding the Dufferin-Eglinton to Lawrence Phase 1 study to the 2018-2019 City Planning Division Study Work Program in light of increasing greater development pressures along the corridor. Josh Collett worked tirelessly with 3 of the community organizations that operate in this area. Lawrence Park Community Organization, mine, and Yorkdale Community Organization, to see that a study would be done in this area because he could pick up that there were development pressures in this area. So what am I suggesting here? I have basically 2 motions that I'm going to read them out and see if anybody from council would like to pick them up. The first is the City Council requests the Chief Planner and Executive Director, City Planning, to add the Dufferin-Eglinton to Lawrence Phase 1 study to the 2019 City Planning Division Study Work Program in light of increasingly greater development pressures along the corridor. And the second motion is the Council requests the Chief Planner and Executive Director, City Planning, to place a moratorium on any future developments on this stretch of Dufferin Street between Lawrence Avenue and Eglinton until such a time as the completion of the Dufferin study is done.
If you could wrap up, you're over 5 minutes.
I'm done.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? Councillor Cole?
I reside, I am at 190 Livingston Avenue, just north of Eglinton.
What I didn't hear from your association in our battle to save the Columbus Center. I just wondered what your position was there.
Well, I'm the one that represents this organization, and you don't have anything in writing because I was going to come here and speak, even though I tried to contact you.
No, I just asked you, what is your organization's position in the successful community activity to stop the condo developments at the Columbus Center right across the street from this site? What was your association's position there? I didn't remember.
What does Columbus Center got to do with this building?
It's right across the street. There was proposal to build 2 condos of significant height, and you're worried about height, you're worried about development on Dufferin.
Yes. Well, it is not the Columbus Center that's on the floor now, it's this building.
No, but you're worried about height?
Okay, well, we're going to have a meeting about Columbus Center, and you'll see me there.
All right. Councillor Cole, maybe it's time to take it offline. Any other questions for the deputant? No? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Tony Volvenstetta? Testa? Hope I got that right.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. That was a great attempt at my last name. Tony Volpentesta. I'm the planning consultant here on behalf of the applicant. And I'm basically going to repeat the message I gave to this community council back in July when this matter came before you. the message is as follows. When the journey began greater than 2 years ago to file an application on this site, my client and I met with the then councillor, and we made a promise. We basically promised that we would file an application that was mid-rise guideline compliant, and we would work with the planning department. I know he was shocked at that promise. We did exactly as promised. In fact, and I want to commend the efforts of the planning department. I want to commend Mr. Duramo, Mr. Rozowski, in their resolve in terms of evaluating this proposal before you. The proposal is, the report that you have before you basically seeks direction to allow city planning to appear at LPAD in support of the application. The reason behind that is that the application is mid-rise compliant. And I do want to emphasize the fact that the members of the community may think that we've been unreasonable, but I would highlight the fact that the proposal is ultimately reasonable for that very same reason. The building design is mid-rise guideline compliant. We have, I've heard Mr. Fusillo, the previous speaker, and he points to no study and a negative precedent. I would actually counter that with a response that's embedded in the planning rationale. So the extensive analysis provided by the planning department in its report to you basically tell you why they could support it. The reason why they don't think a study was necessary is that an applicant can file an application in advance of an avenue study. They are required to file a segment study, as we did, which the planning department has reviewed. But the reason why it's not deemed to be a negative precedent is that the building is mid-rise guideline compliant. I would close by saying this. I would urge you to adopt the recommendations before you. My client has indicated a willingness to meet with the speakers that have spoken here today, offline, of course, and have that discussion with them. But I think ultimately you should adopt the recommendation provided to you by your own planning department. Those are my comments, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for the deputant? No. Thank you very much. Questions for staff? Councillor Carroll.
Yes, I'm just wondering if staff want to, I guess what I'm asking is if they want to comment on what we've just heard from the applicant's remarks. There is an avenue section in the report, and it talks about how, you know, if an avenue study is not available, that we do have avenue policies, we have guidelines, but there has been an avenue study requested here. So is the reason this report is not a full opposition report saying he cannot proceed until after there's an avenue study, is it doesn't come right out and say it, but is what the applicant's saying to us that as long as he stayed within mid-rise guidelines, he's probably staying within our general avenue policies? Is that why we're looking at this application today?
That's correct through you, Mr. Chair. When you look at this proposal, it complies with many of the major policy directions through the mid-rise guidelines and the avenue study policies in the official plan. It's a mixed-use designated site, so there's no land use issue. With regards to the scale and form of development, it's an 8-story building which falls within a 1-to-1 ratio with the width of Dufferin Street, which is 27 meters, so it's a 1-to-1 ratio, as well as the entire project falls within the 45-degree angular plane at the rear of the property next to the existing neighborhoods. So in terms of a mid-rise building, this is somewhat of a poster child of a mid-rise building. And as you can see in the report that we've put forward, there are still some minor massing issues and design issues that still need to be resolved. Subject to those being resolved, we would recommend the city solicitor go to the LPAT in support of this application.
Okay, and to allay the concerns for the community, but while the Avenue Study Program is fully prescribed for the next couple of years, there is a plan to complete an avenue study for this stretch from Eglinton and Lawrence in the near future. Is there going to be an attempt made to meet the former councillor's motion?
Yes, it's on our current work program. However, in looking at our resources citywide, we have to prioritize where we apply those resources.
Yeah.
And in terms of a Dufferin Street between Lawrence and Eglinton, eventually we will do an avenue study there. I should say that, and perhaps our city solicitor can answer to that. When I look at that stretch of Dufferin Street, the area from Lawrence up to 401 has experienced considerable growth and development pressures, and we've completed an avenue study for that area, which is subject to appeal, and we're dealing with the appeals at the board now. The segment between Lawrence and Eglinton, although there has experienced some development applications, currently we have 3 major applications in that corridor. One at 3000 Dufferin Street, which is just to the north of here, this application that we're dealing with today, and one closer to Eglinton at 2311 Dufferin Street. And all those 3 applications are currently appealed and before the board. So even if we were to do an avenue study, which ordinarily takes 2 years, these 3 development applications are already in the queue, and they would be able to claim clergy in terms of their applications. So to answer your question, yes, we will eventually be doing a Dufferin Street Avenue study, but it's not necessary for our consideration of this application.
But you'll take them application by application. If one came that clearly was questionable, was going beyond this, modest mid-rise application, you would evoke you're going to have to wait till the avenue study's done.
That's certainly a consideration that we look at. That as
Yeah.
well as other factors.
Here you're close to the major intersection because it's not too far south of Lawrence.
Yeah.
There's kind of a natural boundary in that great big TDSB property. But if you started into right in the middle of the corridor and something well beyond mid-rise, we have policy oomph enough to say, no, you're gonna have to wait till we do the study.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Cole, there was a person who wanted to depute, who was not originally on the list, and they've asked to do so. So we're going to vary procedure just slightly. We'll come back to questions for staff. But Frank Cavelli, if you'd like to depute, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm a property owner in the area, and the family lives in the area as well. Just a few general comments that I wanted to make was signage hasn't been present on the property to notify the businesses and other community members in the area of what is being proposed. This was raised before regarding signage, and we haven't seen that, so I think that a lot of communities may not even be aware of this proposal. The second is, just in terms of being the poster development for mid-rise, from my understanding of the plans, the property is structured to be built right on the property line. And to me, that's not a poster child for development. I think setbacks are in place by the city. I think they should be respected. I think allowing them to build on the property line sets precedence, which I think should not be tolerated. I think having 10 stories on a property line, to me, wouldn't be allowed to any property owner. And I think rules are in place and should be looked at. Another thing that was mentioned at one of our meetings was a traffic assessment. We have a lot of concerns in the area regarding traffic. This is a school zone, a lot of elderly in the area, and when that was discussed, from my understanding, the traffic assessment was based on figures many years ago, before the development at Dufferin and Lawrence, and before many developments in the area. All of us know, if you've driven in this area, traffic is a big issue. We've raised that. Safety concerns have been raised. This is a school zone. To me, the traffic assessments that were presented to us as a community were insufficient, were dated, based on the figures. The other thing is, one thing that was proposed is any development, if they felt had very minimal or zero impact on traffic, should note that the community would want traffic to flow to Dufferin. Based on those points of being a school zone, being an elderly area as well, housing a lot of elders, we would want to keep it safe. We've already had concerns with accidents. And just the increased density, I think, you know, setting precedents of 8-story on a property line, flanking neighbors, people's property. This is very different than north of Lawrence, which is more commercial. This, again, this is on people's backyard. It's not recessed sufficiently to allow privacy, to allow noise concerns, pollution concerns, traffic concerns. And I think what we received as a community was insufficient to show that it's going to be, the impact will be negligible, or at least not detrimental to the community overall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for, sir? Sir, there is a question for you from the local councillor.
Is Covelli.
Covelli.
Covelli. I own 34 Claver, and family lives as well in the area.
So you live on Claver?
Yes.
Okay, 34 Claver. And you mentioned 10 stories.
8 stories. Sorry, the proposal is an 8-story development.
Okay, because you had said 10 stories, that's what I was.
Oh, I apologize if I said
Okay,
10.
thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We'll now jump back to where we were, questions for staff. I think Councillor Cole, you had questions for staff?
Yes, a couple of questions. First question is, what is the status of the Columbus Center application that was rejected by this council unanimously, which is right across the street from this proposal? I was just wondering.
It's not really the item before us.
No, but it talks, Mr. Chairman, it talks about the concern about density, height, precedent. So what happens across the street has a definite impact on what the residents are concerned about.
Well, if staff are willing to answer, I guess it's okay, but once again, it's not before us.
Well, I think what's before us is what's happening on Dufferin. The residents are concerned. I'm very concerned about what's happening on Dufferin in terms of density, development, and you've got a number of major developments, and this is one of the concerns.
Okay, let's see what they say.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can advise of the status of an application if you want to, but not, we won't get into the merits of the application.
No, I just wondered where it's at.
Okay. The through you, Mr. Chair, the application is inactive. The proposal lost provincial funding. We had requested the applicant withdraw the application, and they have not done that.
So it's still before the Ontario Municipal Board?
Yes, now LPAT, yes.
Now LPAT. Okay, the second question is in terms of height and precedent. I mean, this is an 8-story proposal. What are the heights across the street in terms of heights? 3,000 Dufferin, how many stories is that, for instance?
Through Mr. Chair, that application is a different land use category, where this site is mixed use, the other site is apartment neighborhoods. The existing building that has the development application at 3,000 Dufferin is an 18-story building.
It's 18 stories, already there. That's been there for many years. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Any other questions for staff? No? Speakers? Councillor Cole?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to move that there be a committee set up of local residents, immediate local residents, for advice on the site plan approval process. So in essence, a site plan approval committee of residents be set up in consultation with the local councillor.
Is this a working group? Or?
Yeah, site plan approval working group, so that we can address the concern about angular plane and shade and balconies, as was mentioned by one of the applicants. The other thing I'd like to say is that, I would hope that we also can, I know the staff commented about the avenue study south of Eglinton, south of Lawrence to Eglinton. And I would like to reaffirm my support for that avenue study to take place. And I know we're challenged with resources and a number of other issues that planning staff is certainly faced with. But in terms of the future activity that's possible in this area, not only this application, but potentially others that we find any way possible of expediting resources towards an avenue study for the area from Lawrence to Eglinton. I think that would be helpful in terms of having a better comprehensive approach to the proposals that are going to be coming forward or are already on the docket there.
Councillor Cole, are these just undertakings, or did you want formal motions passed?
I'll motion to basically have the working group set up, and secondly, that staff expedite the establishment of an avenue study for the area south of Lawrence to Eglinton. So those are two actual motions. I'll speak to them in a second.
They're not drafted. Did you want to work with the clerk? We'll hold the item down. All right, let's hold the item down, work with the clerk, let's craft the motions, and then we'll move the whole package.
Yeah, okay.
All right? So we're holding 2.5 down. 2.6, request for directions report, draft plan, subdivision, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications, 57 Linnell Street. Councillor Filling.
Thank you. I'm going to move that this go on to council without recommendation. It's unusually complicated application for something that's very low density, and it is, so I need to do a number of things, including have a new community consultation meeting, because the community, there hasn't been a meeting for 5 years, and the application has changed significantly. There's also some technical issues that need to be explored before we come up with a position. The reason I'm not just deferring it is because the city promised the appeal board that they would have a position arising out of the next council meeting. So the intention is to move it forward, but then have 2 weeks between now and council to refine the the staff recommendations.
Okay. Yes, it is. It is moved. Okay. Councillor Carroll.
I have a quick question.
For the mover?
No, it's a quick question of staff.
Okay, staff to the
and
floor.
again, I'm only asking it because we're in a new system here. I have a couple of these that are going to come up this way myself, where in these cases where we give request for direction, we're going to have a number that will come up that are requests for direction, staff to oppose unless the following conditions are met. And 6 has an interesting recommendation in it as well. What I'm wondering is, as we go forward on this, what I'm not seeing is the language that was used to describe LPATs when we first started, which was the only thing that the LPAT can, the only penalty they can exact is to direct them back to the city to work with them. But we're seeing language, if LPAT should approve, no matter what we say. Now it sounds very OMB-like. So is that because we're in this transitional phase? Will we eventually get into language that simply it's coming back to us and we don't have to move these motions?
That's correct. There's, because we're still in a transition, some files are legacy files and still under the old rules, and that applies to this application. This is an older application that the old OMB rules apply to this, so we don't have to make a decision on it. It's already appealed before the board for lack of decision, so the old rules apply to this case. But
so they could de novo decide whatever.
Yes.
And unless we move a motion, there wouldn't be a report back to council to tell them that?
Sorry, we wouldn't.
I'm worried that we're going to lose track of these ones that are transitional, because while they applied under the OMB, I've been to hearings since LPAT started. We've been to hearings where applications registered under the OMB, but to the residents in that room, it feels very LPAT-like, if you know what I mean. So there's a sense of safety, but there is still, we still have a set of cases that could de novo happen against our wishes.
Correct.
Okay, and this is one of them?
Yes.
Okay. It's another one of those reports I may want to make it planning of growth. I think we have to track them. Thank you.
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, we are tracking them. Legal services and planning are tracking, so we're very clear on which ones apply for the old rules and the new rules.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the recommendations applied appropriately.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. So before us is, Councillor Fillion has moved that item 6, request for directions report, draft plan, 57 Linnell Street, be referred to or be moved to City Council without recommendation. Your motion still holds. Move without recommendation? Yes. Forward to council without recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We now jump to item 25, application to remove a city-owned tree, 494 Deloraine Avenue. Councillor Cole?
I support the staff recommendation.
You're moving the staff recommendations? I don't have any deputants on item 25, is that correct? That is correct. Local councillors move the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 26, application to remove a private tree, 168 Erskine Avenue. Councillor Robinson.
There's a debutant on that, is there not? Am I wrong?
You are correct. There is a debutant, Cristina Robson. Thank you for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and council members. My name is Cristina Robson, and I'm here representing one of 28 signatures of the petition against the removal of the tree at 168 Erskine Avenue. I've been a resident on the west side of this building for 10 years, and I'm very concerned about the negative impacts that this removal could have on my building and rental unit. Removing this tree would allow direct sunlight onto the building, causing extreme heat inside the units in the summer months. The residents would either suffer from this heat or incur very high electricity bills because of using the air conditioning constantly. The management company, Corvin Developments, has appealed this decision because they claim that the tree's roots are a concern for the structural integrity of the driveway. So I have some photos here of the driveway. So you can see that there are definitely cracks in this photo. However, the cracks don't just stay on the area where the tree is. So the cracks on the driveway actually go from the very beginning of the driveway, where there are no tree roots, all the way to the back. And this is because the driveway has had zero maintenance since 2006. It's common knowledge as a building owner that driveways should be resealed every 2 to 3 years. We are now about 10 years past the recommended maintenance period, so it is not a surprise that there are cracks on the full length of the driveway. In addition, I thought I would take some photos of the building as well, since the tree is only a few meters away. So this is the wall directly across from the actual tree where the roots would be impeding on the building. As you can see, there are no concerning cracks whatsoever. I've also taken some photos inside the garage. This is also directly across from where the tree is, where the roots could impede on the building wall. There are absolutely no concerning cracks on this area either. So then the question would be, why would Corvin Developments appeal this decision? Unfortunately, the residents of this building have been experiencing many tactics from the management to try to get long-term rent-protected residents to move out. Management has gone as far as to bribe some of our tenants using a letter stating that if the tenants moved out within 60 days of the letter, they would be awarded an unknown monetary sum. Unfortunately, I don't have the letter with me. Most
Right,
of my,
well, okay, we're here to talk about a tree, not
Sure.
a war between tenants and a landlord,
Okay.
so.
So, since we don't believe that there's a real concern about the roots of the tree, and our real concern is our comfort in our units, we don't believe that the tree should be removed. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Carroll, a question for the deputant?
So, with all due respect to the chair's comments, it sounds like we do have this really is between tenants and the landlord. This building is in an area where there's a lot of development going on.
Mhm.
And we have really strict policies around tenants being taken care of, relocated, compensated, et cetera, and rental units reproduced if someone's going to develop. It sounds like this developer is doing things on the site and maybe interacting with the tenants in a way that he's trying to make sure he won't have those types of problems if he wants to develop this property.
Okay.
Is that maybe what's going on?
The property has been maintained recently. They've done some major improvements. For example, the elevator was completely redone. So I don't believe that they're
So
planning
I don't
on...
think he's trying to clear the building out, but he's
No, I don't
offering-
think they want to tear down the building.
Okay.
No,
okay.
definitely not. They wouldn't have spent all that money recently if they wanted to do that.
Excellent, excellent. Have the tenants pointed out that they don't think the tree is the only driveway problem, that they'd just like to have the driveway repaired, please?
Our tenants are very quiet. They keep to themselves, and they typically don't complain. I'm usually the instigator in the building, and I get people round up, and I was the one who got the petition started, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Those are helpful answers.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Robinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cristina, thank you very much for coming today. I have received a number of emails, and your petition of, I think it was at least 28 signatures. And many people very concerned about not just the loss of shade, but impacts on the heating, cooling of the building. So thank you for that. Would you say, just playing on Councillor Carroll's comments, the Yonge Eglinton area is experiencing unprecedented levels of growth. Would you say that there's been an impact on the tree canopy in the Yonge Eglinton area and that we need to protect the...
Oh, yes, definitely.
Quite sizable? I
Oh,
mean,
for sure. Most of the new buildings have planted very few trees, and the trees that are there are tiny. So we have very little left.
Okay, and there seems to be broad support for, trying to preserve and protect this tree?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, that's it. If I could ask staff questions too?
If everyone loves this tree, I fail to see what the problem is here. It's an amazing tree. Okay, that's great. So,
Oh, if he's asking one, I want to.
all right, questions for staff, Councillor Robinson, and then Councillor Manor-Wong.
Okay, to staff. My understanding this is an elm tree.
Through the chair, that's correct.
How many elm trees did we lose in the 1960s? Exactly, the number. No, but was it like, what was the impact of that in the 60s?
The Dutch elm disease, which the city is still dealing with, has taken about 90% of our native elm population.
98?
90%.
Oh, 90, wow, okay. And are these deemed rare trees?
At present, it would be a rare species within the city, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Manor-Wong?
In the report, it says, the arborist report indicates the vitality of the tree is fair to poor. Yes?
Through the chair, that is what the arborist report provides, yes.
And so my first question is I'm curious. Yeah, have you ever thought of putting the arborist reports in the report?
Through the chair, you would have to talk to our policy department. It's generally, it could be included, though through city staff's inspection, we did determine that the tree is healthy and maintainable. So city staff's recommendation was included.
And so in the absence of having to review the report, I just think it's an interesting idea, if there's an arborist report, that, maybe it's an additional piece of information to review, and it doesn't give us, I'm just talking to the chair, it doesn't give us a full picture of, what's going on with the tree. So what did the arborist report that was done by first of all, who did the arborist report was commissioned by the applicant, yes?
That's correct. So there's a private arborist report that's submitted with the removal permit application, and then city staff as well does a report.
And what did this arborist report say in terms of, I guess it might have been supporting analysis to suggest the tree was in fair to poor condition?
There's not much detail, but it was provided that there was 20% to 25% dead wood. They claim the structure is fair without detail, and physical damage to the roots.
Physical damage to the roots?
Yes, through the chair, I believe that is due to the limited rooting area.
Oh, I see. And is there a limited rooting area? Would you agree with that?
Yes, there is hard surface on both sides, but there's an open area where the tree has grown.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manor-Wong. Councillor Fillion, questions to staff?
Yes, the arborist report you're talking about, and I've got my quotation mark fingers up. That's the arborist report that is the arborist who is hired by the person who wants to remove the tree and what they submit, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Do we ever get reports from applicants, from arborists hired by applicants that say, you know what, it's a fantastic tree, we should maintain it, and they include that with their submission to remove a tree?
Very rarely.
Very rarely, as in?
I've seen one, yes.
Yeah. So, on city staff, we have arborists, correct?
That's correct.
So what we have before us is basically the city arborist's report.
That is correct.
Thank you.
No. I think it's supporting staff recommendations to deny. On 26th. Okay, any other questions for staff? Councillor Robinson, what would you like to do with this item?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to follow staff recommendations. Number one, where they recommend that City Council deny the request for a permit to remove this privately owned tree on the boundaries of 160 and 168 Erskine Avenue. There's 5 reasons I'd like to do that. One is elm trees are rare, and we've lost a lot of them, as we've heard from our arborist. Also, this area, as Councillor Carroll pointed out, has lost massive amounts of the tree canopy through the developments that have happened there, and it's unprecedented level of growth. The trees are always victims in that, and we've lost many, many beautiful trees in this area. Also, you can see the mobilization of neighbors. Often on these issues, I don't get a lot of emails or petitions. This time I did, from over 28 people, and their concerns of the impact on the building, cooling, heating, loss of shade for the neighborhood. And also, I think the biggest point and most powerful is that staff found no evidence of damage to the applicant's driveway as a result of the tree. So, and then lastly, we have our arborists at City Hall recommending that as a council we deny this. So for those 5 reasons, I hope that council committee will support me in saving this tree.
Okay, so you'd like to speak? Okay, Councillor Manor-Wong.
So I'm satisfied with the staff report and happy to support it. After questioning, our staff about this, it seems clear to me that the report that I asked questions about was probably unsatisfactory. It wasn't really detailed. I do take exception to this idea that, or the insinuation that by putting air quotes around external arborist reports that we shouldn't pay any respect to them. If that's the case, I would look forward to the councillor moving a motion to council requiring homeowners not to provide an arborist report if he's not going to respect them. If this council doesn't respect professional opinions of arborists, it's quite expensive for a lot of homeowners to pay for all the costs and red tape that's required by the city to take down a tree. And then for us to disparage the very reports that we ask them to get and not even examine them or look at them with some level of scrutiny is disrespectful to the taxpayers who we require to get these reports.
Okay, any other
I just
speakers?
have to respond
I've
to
never
that, not to
seen
get off that
such
side
a
of
motion
things,
about
but-
a tree.
But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, Councillor Min and Wong, you had implied that, or I took it as you implying that there was an arborist report that wasn't before us. And in fact, what wasn't before us was the arborist hired by the applicant, but we have the city arborist report in front of us. That's what I wanted to make clear.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Robinson, you are going to move staff recommendations? Okay, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Item 27, the timed item, 10:45. We have two deputants, Mohammed Mazahari. This is regarding removal of a tree, or application to remove a tree, 82 Cameron Avenue, Councillor Fillion's ward. Thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Mohammed Mazahiri. I have tried the best I could do to save this tree during the construction, but at the end of this sort of the lengthy, difficult construction, I have find out I do not have a proper access to this property. If I have a property access to this property, I'm going to create the hazard for public because of the tree. So I have no choice either to create the hazard, which never I want that, nobody wants that, or cutting down the tree. So that's what I'm here. And just to show you, mostly this house was excavated in front by hand. These are the picture of the wall of excavation respect to tree. The material was taken in and out by conveyor. For this small house, and you could imagine having this equipment parked on the public road, and every time neighbor rightfully they wanted to go in and out, they have to remove all these machinery back and forth, which was very sort of the difficult things to do to setting it up again. And just to show you, for the water, we have to do the tunnel underneath of this tree, and I had no problem of doing all those things for the sake of saving tree, as I was told by city, and I complied with all the bylaws or whatever they imposed on me for this tree. I did that. However, now all my life saving, my wife, my son, everything is in this house. And this is my son's house, and we cannot have my wife She is disabled, she cannot go on the steps, and we cannot go to the house. So that's what I'm here, and I'm hoping someone see this problem we have, and I'm wishing safety, it is important someone see that. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? Councillor Carroll?
I'm not understanding what, in the report, it talks about an integral existing garage. I'm not understanding what that is.
In my building permit, they have given me the garage, and they had indicated in Committee of Adjustment, in a time which forestry decide to see the tree is not sustainable, then they're going to remove it, and I could have a driveway to the garage.
So, what they told you, if the tree died of natural causes, you could put in a garage? Is that what you mean?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll.
Actually, a follow-up question.
Follow-up question.
Because I'm trying to understand from the picture, would that end up being a reverse grade driveway? Is the garage below the house, or where is the garage? Because it's a very narrow site.
No, madam, no. It's a positive. It is over 2% slope from the garage to the center of the road.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
But the garage at this time, the garage is behind because the grade of the tree is about a meter over the street, and there is no sidewalk in the north side of the... Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other questions for the deputant? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Isaac Tang? Thank you, Mr. Tang, for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of council. My name is Isaac Tang. I'm a partner at Borden Lander Gervais and legal counsel to Mohammed, who just heard from, his wife and son, who are sitting upstairs. His son is the owner of the house at 82 Cameron. Mohammed is actually the builder of the home. You saw the photos, and Huri is Reza's mother. We sent a letter in yesterday describing our concerns with the recommendations from staff regarding our client's application for a tree removal permit. And the reasons that staff indicated for keeping the tree are simple. It's on the first page of the staff report. They say, urban forestry does not support removal of this tree as it is healthy and maintainable. Now, with respect, that is not the issue before council. It's not that simple. The issue is whether the city's tree preservation policies should trump accessibility rights protected by law under the Human Rights Code, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, or the AODA, and the city's own policies intended to protect persons with disabilities from discrimination. And that is because Mohammed's wife, Reza's mom, who's sitting up there, can't use stairs. She can't come down and make this deputation because she has suffered from a physical disability for at least 2 years. She needs to use a cane. She has to use elevators. So she cannot visit her son if she is forced to use stairs to access the home. And that is the reason why Mohammed has to lower the walkway, not a driveway, the walkway, from 19% to 8% to comply with accessibility standards. Now, you've already heard the significant costs that Mohammed had incurred in building the home. And he tried everything to save the tree. You can see from this drawing here that the tree is located right here. The home was part of a severance application, and the walkway is located right here. So he tried his best to build, to comply, but the fact is that the tree or the walkway needs to be reduced in grade, and because of that, the tree's roots need to be cut. We have our arborist here, and we've included an arborist report in the letter I submitted yesterday, which states that if we need to lower the slope, the tree's structural roots will need to be cut. We're not talking about the roots over here. We're talking about right beside the tree because the walkway is located here. There is no other option for our client. This is a better depiction. You can see the walkway is located right next to it. Our arborist has said cutting the roots will have two effects. It will destabilize the tree, causing the hazard that Mohammed had mentioned, and it will negatively impact the health of the tree. So even if the tree doesn't fall, it's likely that it won't survive. So there's no other option for our clients but to remove the tree to ensure that a hazard is not created. And number two, the walkway is built so that his wife can visit his son's home. That's the issue before council. So I want to briefly talk about now the legal reasons for granting the permit. The tree is owned by the city and it's located on the city's boulevard. Now the AODA applies to the city's public spaces, which includes this boulevard. The city is by law required to comply with the AODA. That requires no stairs and a reduced slope if there are accessibility concerns like there is right before you now. And the city has time and time again committed to accessibility, to making the city accessible, starting in 2009, 2014, and most recently in June 2018 to comply with the AODA. This is the extract from the city's own corporate accessibility policies. It's at our letter. It states, as required by the AODA, the city must accommodate the accessibility needs of people with disabilities to ensure that they can obtain, use, or obtain benefits from city goods, services, and facilities at a cost no greater than the cost for people without disabilities. Aside from the AODA, the Human Rights Code also applies to the city's actions. The purpose of the code is to ensure that persons with disabilities are not discriminated. The city's actions of granting or not granting the tree removal permit is subject to the Human Rights Code. And under the code, there is a duty on the part of the city to accommodate persons with disabilities unless it results in undue hardship. And with all due respect, I cannot see how granting a tree removal permit with appropriate conditions would amount to undue hardship under the code. So in closing, we submit that a preservation of a single tree in this instance should not outweigh the rights of persons with disabilities to access their son's home or the provisions of the AODA, the city's accessibility policies, and the code. So I see my time's coming to a close, but our recommendation is that Community Council grant the application for a tree removal permit on the condition that the owner agrees to provide cash in lieu for the appraised value of the tree and 5 replacement trees. And that is entirely consistent with the condition that was sought by city staff if council decides in its discretion to grant the permit. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputants? Councillor Carroll.
Just to be clear, I don't know if you mentioned that you had an accessibility issue when you registered to make this set of comments, but we can accommodate people with accessibility issues. You can enter this room from this level, so if your client wanted to speak for herself, she certainly could. We have an accommodation plan here today. Is that the case, or is she happy with you speaking for her?
Well, her husband has spoken for the family, I believe, but thank you for that, Councillor Carroll. I certainly understand that.
You can bring them down in the elevator and in this door. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Menawong.
I just need to be clear. Who lives in the house now? Is it the son?
At this time, Councillor Minawang, there's no one that lives in the home. It's owned. The property is owned by the son.
But the son's going to live there, yes?
But the son's going to live there, and the mom will visit the son regularly because they have a close family.
The mom, who you say needs accessibility, it's not a. She doesn't live there. It's he who lives there, and he's completely mobile.
He is mobile, but
yeah, no. That's all I want to know. He's the owner of the house is completely mobile.
Yes, but Councillor, the Human Rights Code applies.
That's all I asked about. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Menawong. Any other questions for the deputants? Legal is frantically waving a hand over there. Is there something you'd like to?
Yes, sir. I think because of the issues raised by Mr. Tang, I think this council should defer this matter.
Okay, councillors, we'll take that under advisement. Okay, let's let the local councillor hold it down for a few minutes while he confers with legal. So we'll hold down item 27 and go to item 28.
Yes, Mr.
Councillor.
Yeah, Mr. Chair? That's
Yes.
Ward 15 item.
Yes.
So this is a front yard parking request.
Sorry. We have a deputant.
Oh, you do?
A last-minute deputant on this item.
Oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that. So I was actually,
Yeah.
is it a neighbor or is it the actually applicant? Do we know? I guess
It is a neighbor.
it's a neighbor, okay. So actually, I love to save the neighbor the trouble by advising that I'd like to defer this item, Mr. Chair, because it came from Toronto East York, and it was deferred indefinitely there, and it's now landed on this agenda. I think there's a little legwork to do to understand from the former local councillor why it was deferred indefinitely. And I did give the applicant the heads up that that's what I was probably going to do, just because there wasn't enough time to really understand this. We've also had 2 neighbors reach out to us concerned about this application request. So my preference would be to defer this and do a bit more research and understand from staff why it's back on this agenda, et cetera.
To the next scheduled meeting?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, so, councillors?
Rachel?
Councillors, we have a motion to defer. It's item 28. I realize there's a name on the list here, Apostolos Sigilis. Yeah, I would just, this item is going to come up at the next regularly scheduled North York Community Council meeting, which I believe is February the 14th. Is that correct? Yes, it's Valentine's Day. If you depute today, you cannot depute on the 14th when the item will be heard. Okay, so maybe waiting is prudent. Motion to defer. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, so let's go back to 27. Councillor Filling, what would you like to do here?
I would like to move the staff recommendations.
Okay, staff recommendations are,
That the request be denied.
okay. Staff recommendations are on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Twenty 29, request for fence exemption, rear yard, 21 Armour. And we do have we have deputants for this item. Mildred Davis.
May I ask a question
Yes.
before I start?
You have 5 minutes.
Well, I just want to know, for reading what your recommendation of, is that part of my 5 minutes? Because I want to be clear on what it is that I'm...
Well, you have 5 minutes to speak to the item before us, which is a fence exemption for 21 Armour Boulevard.
Okay.
And the staff recommendation is to refuse the grant application. It's a refusal report before us.
Okay.
So, yeah.
My name is Mildred Davis, and I'm here today because I live next door. When we moved into this property, it was made clear that the fence at number 21 was over the variance, and that the previous person who owned number 23 and 21 were not talking to each other and in total disagreement over that fence. So if you look at what I sent, and I'm assuming you all received the pictures, the current owner, the Blacks, were fully aware that that fence, that as it stood, was already over and above the variance, the bylaws. One of the things is we were getting ready for work, 2007, and we suddenly heard this loud noise, and when we ran downstairs, it was Method, a crew, sledgehammering from number 21 side over that entire fence over to our side, number 23. They told us to get out of our face. We have a permit and we're doing this. So we were stunned because they were now damaging our property with the sledgehammer. There was no fence on 2/3 of that property. And one of the things is, as we learned later on, there was no permit that was given to do that fence. So we wanted to make that really known. There was no permit. One of the things is, and I try to show this in the photos that I sent to you guys, and I'm not going to repeat them here, I think you all have them. In the photos, you can clearly see by putting up the extra above, it's a solid wall, you can't see anything through that. No sun, no nothing. So as I went to bed last night and I woke up this morning, I thought, how can this be fair? I've lived there for 22 years with a fence that was already above what the bylaw permitted. The current neighbor, Mr. and Mrs. Black, they know very well what the rules are, what the procedures are. They just choose to ignore every single one of them and do as they like, whenever they like.
All right, let's focus on the fence
I am.
itself rather than attacking neighbors.
What I'm trying to get to, Mr. Chair, is the fact that even though there are rules in place, they are avoiding all the rules. I love my planet. I love the sun. With the new fence, the way it is, we don't get any sun. They were aware of this, that there was a variance issue. They came to visit that house and that backyard in particular and stood at that fence 3 times before they bought. So, sorry, you're looking at me, so I think you have a question.
No, I thought you were wrapping up, so I was going to ask my colleagues whether they had any questions for you. Yes. So if you're done, I believe some of my colleagues have questions for you. I'm going to start with Councillor Carroll. If you're done.
I'm just going to say one thing in
Okay,
closing.
sure.
It was interesting that they've blocked out my son, but yet on October 25th, they hired somebody to come in and cut a whole bunch of trees in their backyard so they can get sun. I really don't believe it is fair for this meeting to approve another variance so that the current owners and any previous sales would be dealing with this. They would never, ever. And just so the city also knows, there are nails still in that fence, and it's very dangerous.
Okay, fair enough. Questions for the deputant? Councillor Carroll?
Yeah, I'm just looking at, this fence is odd, and you're saying they built it to separate themselves from the neighbors before you moved in, or?
No.
They built it after
The
you went in?
neighbors who were there, the Loutons, they built that fence before we moved in, July of 1996. It was already over variance.
Right, so that's why it looks like it was tall to begin with, but then it looks like there's a topper, but then they added a section.
No, that
They've made
was
it
a
taller
ladder.
than-
No,
yeah.
right. So what they did was take down that complete fence and then went higher and went more solid wood.
So they went higher, and the new fence that they built is so high that it has to be stabilized. It looks like 10 or 12 inches before you even get to the top. There's like a double layer at the top just to keep it stable when it's that tall.
Thank you for that, because that's another problem. In terms of safety, it's above our head. My son is 6'2".
Yeah.
Yeah, and wind, yeah. And broken branches from the trees they had before, till they just cut it, would blow and hit. They don't take care of anything. And that was why I sent slides to you that said maintenance, because I wanted you to understand.
Yeah.
They don't maintain anything.
And so it's built on your side, it's built right onto your paving stones. So they've gone into the earth just in the posts in between, but then the slats underneath, they're not really starting in the ground. They're just running across paving stones.
No.
It's not really a stable fence.
No, it
It's a little
isn't.
too tall.
That's right. And one of the things that they've also, why it's not stable, they did not put enough stones and concrete in the things you put in the
Right.
ground. We have pictures to
Right.
show those holes are not filled, and we have brought this to Mr. Black's attention. He's done absolutely nothing. Mr. Black, don't shake your head. We've sent him an email. We have that documented, and he has not responded.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
And in also closing, I would like to say thank you to the city, 311. We've gone to a number of the organizations, and everything that always comes back is Mr. Black does what he wants, when he wants.
Okay,
Sir,
enough. We're here to see whether this fence exemption whether we're going to support it or not to judge neighbors. Any other questions for the deputant? No?
Yeah,
no,
he's got a
Councillor-
point.
There's a Trevor Davis.
I really don't have much more to add. My name is Trevor Davis. I live at 23 Armour Boulevard. I think what my wife shared with the committee today was fairly accurate in terms of being very, very brief. I am not supporting the exemption or the variance. As she noted, that was well known to the previous owners of our place and the neighbor. And it was our understanding that if that existing fence was to be replaced, that it would be built to code and not to exceed the current variances. And my only question to staff would be, if you do indeed grant this variance, will that apply to any other fencing that would be adjoined to 21 Armour Boulevard? So that's just the question I'd like to understand. So once that height now has been established, can that be now grandfathered around the property? Okay.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. This has been deferred at least once from July of last year.
And we were present, but I'm not sure why the applicant didn't arrive. So we were here day of the session.
Yeah, we have other deputants on this item, but Councillor Cole, have you made, for the current deputant? Sure. Question, Councillor Cole.
I'd like to ask a question of the present deputant. So could you just, this is a bit perplexing. So you are asking us not to grant the exemption, right?
That is correct.
And could you explain that in Canadian Tire English? Why? How does that affect you? Why should it not be granted?
Well, I mean, there's 2 points. So one, there's an assumption that the code that you guys have in council in terms of building fences is in place, and that the process to acquire a variance, in my opinion, which may be wrong, would be do that before you build and not, ask for forgiveness afterwards. And then lastly, it's deriving us of sunlight into my wife's plants and garden that she's been tending for 22 years. So that's it.
When did the owner of the property, when did that change?
About 5 years ago.
And that's when this fence conflict started?
No, it started probably about 2 years ago when they decided that they were going to do a second renovation and then put up a new fence to replicate their new patio.
And so how much higher is the proposed, or the new fence compared to what it was before they moved in?
I believe it's 6 inches.
Now, would 6 inches really make that much difference to the plants?
That's 6 inches above the previous variance. So I think.
Oh, so how much higher? So, yeah, I'm just trying to.
You may want to ask the staff and read the staff report.
Yeah.
So when we saw that the footings were not properly done and that there were nails exposed through the fence, we called 311 and have the 311 folks come out, and they did the assessment and immediately recognized that the fencing was well beyond code.
But your main concern is the height, not the nails or whatever you talked about.
In front of council today and trying to respect the agenda, the height, but there are a number of issues that still need to be remediated in addition to.
But your main concern is the height.
That's what was brought before council today, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Any other questions for the deputants? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here, Hugelod?
Pronounce that correctly.
Hugelod?
Kuhnhold.
Hugelod. Thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm here to represent Method Earth, who built the fence. We are, under the bylaw, we're allowed to build a fence 2 meters tall. Unfortunately, we built it at 2.10 meters, so 10 centimeters over the allowable limit. Slight, very minor oversight. It does not hinder the plant growth of the neighbors at number 23 Armour Boulevard. In saying that, on the other side of the fence on their property, there are patio stones there. So there's no vegetation that's growing there at all. I don't believe that we're blocking any sunlight from them. That's all I can say about this.
Any questions for the deputant?
Question.
No, Councillor Cole.
So it's 10 meters, I mean 10 centimeters
Yes,
above code
above code.
height. What about, are there other outstanding issues in terms of the requirements in terms of code and building of the fence that are outstanding, as was mentioned by the previous deputant?
So if we look at Defense Bylaw 447, Table 1, Number 5, the allowable height is 2 meters above any deck surface, which that was the only code that there is. So as far as I know, there's nothing else that's.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Any other questions for this deputant? No? Thank you very much. Is there anyone here that wants to speak on this item?
Questions? Staff? You can ask, I'm gonna ask staff.
I got a question. Is David Black here? Oh, yes, thank you very much. You have 5 minutes.
Hello, I'm David Black. I'm the owner of 21 Armour Boulevard. The fence, there's two issues. One is it seems it was built 10 centimeters above code. The second issue is privacy. We had several issues with our neighbour staring over our fence and taking photographs of our children in our kitchen. We reported this to the police. They said install cameras, there's nothing they can do, she's on her property. So we feel, we didn't intend to build it 10 centimetres above, that was an oversight by the contractor. but we do require that fence. It's 3 panels of the fence. The other panels are that along the edge of our backyard are within code. It was completely built on our property, within our property line, because our neighbour, Mr. and Mrs. Davis, refused to share any cost and didn't want anything on their property. There was no fence for most of the backyard. We filled that in because our children play in the backyard, they kick the ball, play soccer. Balls go over the fence, they disappear, so I don't know what she does with them, but that's another issue. There are some long-standing disputes between us and the neighbour. It's nothing to do with this case, so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I have a question for the deputy, but anyone else? Was there any attempt, or are you open to reconstructing or making minor reconstruction revisions to the fence to have it conform?
If we, yeah, I mean, if we have to, we have to. I mean, there's, if that's up to you guys. For 10 centimeters, it's really the cap on the fence that's making the difference. I'm not sure it's going to make a whole lot of difference other than satisfy my neighbour. It's on 3 panel. It's three fence panels. I can ask my contractor to do that, but I don't know if it's worth.
Always puzzled why those in the fence building industry don't know what our bylaws are, and then we use up an enormous amount of time here dealing with construction companies or fence installers who are putting in fences that don't conform.
I agree. I'm not in the business. I just hired someone to
Okay.
do it.
That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? No? Thank you. Questions to staff? Questions to staff? Councillor Carroll?
I'm just wondering, as one of the deputants said, today we're here about compliance with the bylaw, meaning is it the right height? But I'm just wondering if you have any information that you could speak to the structural integrity of this. If we refuse, it looks like the way it was constructed, it would be easy to alter the fence and bring it into compliance. Are there any notes available that would support that? Is the fence structurally sound?
Yeah, good morning, Council. Mark Edser from Municipal Licensing and Standards. I did attend the property last year. The fence integrity, to my eyes, did look to be strong. It was sturdy. It looks like it's embedded into the ground with the fence posts. I wouldn't imagine that reducing the height of it would be a difficult thing to do, but I didn't have any issues at all with the structural integrity of it whatsoever.
Okay, so the way it's built, it looks like taking that top section off would leave topper almost, and it probably would be okay. But if we refuse, do we have to move a motion to that effect, bring the fence into compliance, or is it assumed that if we just adopt recommendation 1, refuse, they're going to tear it down?
Good morning, through the chair. If the council decides to refuse the application, then a second notice is issued to the homeowners to reduce the fence.
Right. So, and then you would follow up on that at whatever time is necessary.
Yes, that's correct.
Do we have, as a result of being hauled into this room, do we sort of look at that and say, look at any of your, look at any part of your fence where you can be a good neighbor. If there are nails sticking out, where it's affixed to the deck, anything like that, fix them now while you're adjusting it. You're going to call your contractor, do it. Do we give that sort of gentle advice?
Well, we would at the time of inspection, but it would not be, unless we felt that there was a safety issue, then it wouldn't be noted in the notice of violation.
Right. And the purpose of this refusing and saying, and then sending the notice to bring it to compliance. Our ultimate goal is that these neighbors are able to coexist, is it not?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Menawong.
So it's a staggered fence, yes? Is the whole thing in violation or just one section?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think it is the first three. It's the first three or four. Yeah, the first three panels of it. It's important to note there is a difference in height on each side as well, because the neighbour, the applicant's side, is higher than the home at number 21, and we look at the average height on it. The average height of that fence being 2.2 metres. So taking it down to bring it into compliance would reduce it quite significant, well, not significantly, but it would reduce it 10 centimetres on the side of the applicants.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? No? Speakers? Sure.
Can you orient me on sunshine? Like, where does the sun? I'm just curious. No, I know, but
Just give me 2 seconds on that, please.
Pictures 8 and 9 show.
sorry, 8 and 9?
Pages 8 and 9 show sunshine direction.
Oh,
So, Councillor, the property faces north, so the fence on that line is on a north-south line.
okay.
The sun would rise in the east, so that any increase in fence height there means that they're going to miss out on potential morning sun, but past the noon time, the sun's going to be over that fence line.
And on page 8, that picture shows the fence owner's backyard?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
With their deck.
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? No? Councillor Cole, what would you like to do here?
Yes, you know, it's very unfortunate that this is before us, really. It's really a dispute between neighbors, and I think the fence and the council, the community council's in the middle of it. I'm going to move to refuse to grant the application for an exemption. Not that I think it's the answer to this, and not that Mr. Black is in the wrong, and I just don't want to take sides, but on the other hand, I think by reducing it by the 10 centimeters, at least we might be able to eliminate one of the bones of contention between these two neighbors that can't get along, it seems, for whatever reasons. So either way, you know, it's difficult to find out what Solomon would do on this, but I just think we've got to try and see if they can work it out, and staff will go visit the site and you know, comply with this direction of reducing it by the 10 centimeters, and then hopefully that it's not too much of a cost to the owner. But that's all I would say to the matter. It is not easy when you've got neighbors that have problems getting along for different reasons that we cannot talk about here. So I'm going to move that we refuse to grant the application for an exemption permit by the owners of 21 Armour Boulevard for 2.22 meter average height fence in the rear yard for failing to comply with the provisions of Toronto Municipal Code Chapter 447 fences.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cole. Recommendation number 1, staff recommendation number 1, a refusal report is moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I'd like to go back to item number 5. Councillor Cole, I understand your motions are ready. We have them on the screen.
Okay. Okay, that movement of the motions here, that North York Community Council recommend that one, City Council adopt the staff recommendations in the recommendation sections of the report, July 3rd, 2018, from the Director of Community Planning, North York District. 2, City Council direct planning staff to report back through the Planning and Housing Committee on the City Planning Division's work program on expediting the establishment of an avenue study in the area of Dufferin, south of Lawrence to Eglinton Avenue. 3, planning staff participate in the establishment of a working group made up of local residents, the applicant, and the local councillor to deal with site plan matters as they pertain to 3019 Dufferin Street. Members of council, just to reiterate the concerns that local residents have, and I think any established neighborhood is always concerned about the impact of new development on their residential street, as in the case here. And this is right on Dufferin, and Claver is, you know, the street that they're talking about. The residents there have concerns. I hope that some of the site plan consultations will eliminate some of these concerns, that they can work with the applicant to and the city staff to work out issues of, you know, shade and balconies, etc. I also think that, you know, I agree there should be an avenue comprehensive study done on Dufferin south of Lawrence, because there are many planning pressures in that whole area. And thirdly, I'd like to say that I guess in the ideal world, we don't want any development or any change on Dufferin, but the reality is Dufferin is undergoing a massive transformation. All the car dealers are disappearing. From Yorkdale, who's got a massive rezoning application coming forward, to the Holiday Inn, which is proposed to be disappearing, all the way down what happened at the Lanterna development at Dufferin and Lawrence, where there's 18, 15, 10-story buildings on that corner that have gone up in recent years. We had a massive battle in the community for 2 years to try and stop condo developments on the Columbus Center site, where they were going to demolish a heritage site to build condos, and luckily the community stopped that. And in fact, there's a heritage vote coming before council on on the 30th. I hope I get your support to designate the Columbus Center as a heritage site. And also, there are other proposals coming forward. The 8 stories, again, is not perfect, but on the other hand, the alternatives of 10, 12, 14, 20 stories is what the community could be facing. And it does meet the mid-rise guidelines, it's mid-rise compliant. And I support mid-rise development on our main arterials. I certainly would like to see 8 stories as opposed to some of the proposals we have in Yonge, Eglinton for 20, 30, 40, 50 stories, or other proposals coming at 10, 20. So the 8 stories is, again, a change that certainly is not easy to take sometimes, but it's reasonable. It fits the long-term plan for all our avenues, and that's why I support the application with the establishment of the consultative site plan committee to look at the impact directly on the immediate neighbors.
All righty. Thank you very much, Councillor Cole. Motions are on the screen. Let's vote on the motions first, and then the item as amended. Take it as a package. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now, if we can go back to item 21. We do have, that is Speed Hump poll results, Hogs Hollow neighborhood.
There's one deputant.
Item 21, and we have a deputant.
Yes.
Christine Aconcia from the York Mills Valley Association. Thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay, for asking me to come. Council members. I'm a director and past president of the YMVA, the York Mills Valley Association, and I've consulted with the board on the following remarks. In fact, the board has worked together to put these points together. I also live on Brookfield Road and witness speeding numerous times during the day. Speed on Brookfield has been an issue for at least 20 years and continues to be so. For example, on Mother's Day, about 3 years ago, a 3-year-old girl living across the street from me ran across the street and almost got hit by a car. This refocused our efforts to get traffic calming measures, including speed humps, installed on our street. Brookfield Road is one of the 2 access roads into the valley and is extensively used by residents, service vehicles, construction trucks, families of the local primary school. As the road is a dead straightaway from the intersection at Donino Avenue until the curve at the end point at Plimbridge Crescent, that's about 300 meters, that has no stop signs. Drivers frequently accelerate and significantly exceed the speed limit. The city conducted a speed study about 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not quite sure of that. Jay would know, which showed the average speed to be 55 kilometers an hour. Brookfield Parquet is located 2/3 of the way down Brookfield Road and is used by not only the neighborhood kids, but other visitors to the valley. And during the summertime, we use it for recreation and a valley fair in June. A street just north of us, Campbell Crescent, has 2 speed humps which were installed last year. And on Old Yonge, also north of us, 2 speed bumps were installed many years ago. Last year, Toronto Hydro workers involved in an upgrade on our street and in our neighborhood mentioned multiple times during the day that they were fearful because of the speeding traffic that was coming along the way. So most recently, in 2015, a survey was done by neighbors. I walked around and collected names to find out if the speed bumps or speed humps would be something that we wanted, and we came back with the 80% buy-in that this city required. Late in 2018, we met with Jay and Transportation Services and caused or initiated that the city installed a 30-kilometer-an-hour signs on Brookfield and a couple other streets in the valley. But this has not created any change to the speeding issue. In 2018, due to the process, city poll was mailed out to 26 homes on Brookfield, totaling of 73 ballots. Less than half were received by the city clerk, 36 to be exact. So we missed the requirements by 2 ballots. Part of the issue is that of the 26 homes on Brookfield, 5 are vacant. I also believe that the poll was not looked at, or the mailing wasn't looked at in a timely manner by some neighbors, because it looked very much like election material. So I know what happened to me. I just deferred it a bit and then realized, oh, I better respond to the poll. We have been working with the city on street design because of the upcoming storm water management work to be done on Brookfield later this year. City designs reviewed and sanctioned by the YMVA would place 2 speed humps across the street on either side of the Brookfield Park. So in closing, I respectfully ask that you, on behalf of the residents of Brookfield and the YMVA, that you sanction the installation of these 2 speed humps. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant?
I'll just have one quick one,
Councillor Robinson?
Madam Speaker. Yeah, just there was support, I think 78% support on Brookfield and I think 100% on Donino, but the poll, I guess, failed to secure the minimum response rate.
Correct.
There was actually a lot of support for it, But because of what your association feels is that it was a bit skewed by vacant home ownership.
Yeah.
That's why you didn't get, and it was only,
the
I think,
mailing issue.
the mailing issue.
I mentioned it to a couple of people. I have dogs, so I get around the neighborhood. And I did say, well, did you follow up on that mailing? And they said, no, I didn't. So I subsequently sent an email to about 5 of the folks in the neighborhood, spurring them on to vote, not to side either way.
Okay. So basically, your association that's very engaged in the neighborhood feels it was simply a case of, well, basically a very narrow margin for the response rate, but there was favorable, very favorable responses on both streets.
Absolutely.
You know, in one case, 100% on Danino.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for coming today.
There's another question for you. Councillor Carroll?
Yes, I can't tell from looking on, I can't tell completely from looking on Google Maps. The streets that we're talking about where the specific speed bumps that you're advocating, are there sidewalks on these streets?
So I didn't realize that. I don't know if you can tell.
There we go.
So there are no, it's rolling curbs, and that's kind of been an issue, why it's been deferred, because policy is that you don't have speed bumps without sidewalks.
Right.
This was done and agreed to just before that mandate, citywide mandate. But the city designers, where Brookfield Park is, they've actually sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I get the idea.
Yeah. So
it's indelibly etched on my brain now.
Goodness. But where the Brookfield Park is, the designers of the street have actually designed a interlocking pad about maybe 5 feet wide, the length of the entrance to the park, to satisfy that criteria to have speed bumps only with sidewalks. Have I explained it properly?
So I'm going to ask staff to clarify that for me.
Please.
But your assertion is that they put those in advance of this so that it would make this consideration possible?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Because it's under construction, the whole area.
Yeah, the whole area is going to be, the street's going to be pulled up, probably, hopefully, end of the summer this year, as part of the stormwater management upgrade that's being done throughout the valley.
Okay, sorry, then I do have a follow-up question. So there's this little piece of interlock, but if the whole street is being torn up, have the community talked about it's time to put sidewalks in Hogs Hollow?
We had that debate years and years ago when this...
I'm aware of that debate.
Oh, okay.
So I'm wondering if that debate has happened again under this new regime.
No.
Okay, thank you.
We don't want sidewalks, I mean, because I think originally it would impact on losing a lot of trees, mature trees in our area. And frankly, I think the standard width of streets would encourage speeding.
Okay, thank you.
I'm simplifying, but
yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll.
you.
Any other questions? Councillor Fillion.
At
Excuse
the
me.
risk of, sorry, at the risk of going off, at the risk of going slightly off topic, but I've been looking at the possibility of building sidewalks out into what is now the street, especially at the time that a street is being rebuilt. So it does two things. It doesn't affect the mature trees, and it reduces the width of the street where people see that as desirable. Might that cause you to reconsider the sidewalk issue?
General sentiment on that street and in the neighborhood is no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fillion. Questions for staff? Councillor Carroll?
So what is the policy around, if we are coming to do this, street, do the whole of Brookfield, if we're going to do this major piece, then the residents have chosen an opportune moment to ask about speed humps when you put the road back. But what is the policy around sidewalks? Do we not also have a policy that you just straight up put in sidewalks when you're reconstructing a road that has no sidewalks and it's a residential street?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not familiar with the sidewalk bylaw. I can't speak to that. I am familiar with the traffic calming policy, so that has always been a specific requirement. I know it is our general practice and preference to certainly consider sidewalks when roads are being resurfaced or reconstructed. I don't know if that's a specific requirement.
Because, well, I am confused now. Councillor Fillion alluded to it, but I've just been through this with a community where they were asking for something to be done with an island in the middle of their street, and when I can't remember if it was public realm or transportation writ large, but they came in to talk about the traffic island and suggested, why don't we also look at sidewalks right now? Let's have this conversation, folks. And similar to this community, people said, we don't want sidewalks. You can't have any of my front yard. You can't have I don't care if it's your easement. There was all sorts of hubbub. But at the end of the conversation, the answer back from staff was, be that as it may, when we come back to do regular maintenance or reconstruction because of any kind of infrastructure work, we will be installing a sidewalk on at least one side of the street. And the only reason I'm belaboring this is we're trying to make this street safer. And we know that visually, if you flag that pedestrians are here by putting a pedestrian sidewalk down beside the road, driving behavior starts to change right away. So I think we've got to get to the bottom of, is this a requirement or not? Because both cost money, but one of them is according to policy, whereas the other one is one that fire and EMS have asked us to please stop doing.
Yeah, again, I do apologize through you, Mr. Chair, with respect to the sidewalk requirement. It is a specific requirement in the traffic calming policy, and you'll see in the approved plans that were submitted with the first staff report, the sidewalk is entirely on the park's frontage where we felt it was, I guess, most appropriate and most required.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
I also have a question.
Councillor Robinson?
Just to get clarification. Sean Darsh was actively involved in this, and we had many meetings. I can't even tell you. I couldn't even really tally all the meetings we had. I wish Sean was here, but because I think he'd do a great job explaining this. So can you just clarify what, first of all, these, I never know if they're bumps or humps, but anyway, they're being proposed in both cases right alongside parks, the two parks in the valley, or Hogs Hollow, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's really the genesis of putting these in, is because these are actively used parks alongside busy roadways, and so that was really the genesis. But what are you proposing putting in? It's kind of a, can you describe what's going to be happening? There's already a trail there, kind of a mud path.
An informal path, but there's nothing, I guess, formally designated. So in conjunction with the other construction that's occurring on this street, we're taking this opportunity to construct, it's a 1.5 meter, which I guess is approximately 4 to 5 feet wide interlocking path, which I guess would be, deemed to be a sidewalk, which would allow us to install the speed humps, which also occur on the park's frontage, which is also where we want people to slow down. We want them to slow down everywhere, but especially in this location.
So there's a path there.
Yes.
That's well utilized and worn, and maybe more 1930s-ish, but it is used. And now you're just going to formalize that with some type of treatment.
Yes, I mean, it would be our preference to do that on the entire street, but as you've heard, the residents are quite opposed to the idea of a sidewalk.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Minawong?
So the policy is for speed bumps, and I'm pretty sure this is true, so it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but I want it confirmed by staff. To consider speed bumps, the precondition is there has to be an existing sidewalk, or staff do not recommend. Is that true?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Right. So, so there are no sidewalks on this, this particular street, so that would be, is that contained in this report?
What, speaking to whether...
That there are
or
no
not-
sidewalks here, therefore it's a bar to considering them?
We do speak to the sidewalk issue, but...
Oh, okay, very good. I missed that. So, and what makes it actually even more actually interesting in this case was what always happens is because it's not in the capital budget, you know, you kind of say, well, you know, it's not in the capital budget, there's no money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But here, this is actually the perfect situation where they actually, it is on the books to actually fix the street now. This is the perfect opportunity to put in a sidewalk. Right? This is when we do it. If we were going to do it, we would do it this time, right now. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I think that's generally...
Because once we put it in, putting in a sidewalk after that becomes very difficult because you've already spent all that money on the water and on the paving and all that. And this would be we're just on, is it a reconstruct or is it just a resurfacing?
It's a reconstruction.
Reconstruction. So this is the big enchilada. This is the thing that is done once in a lifetime. This is the time to do that. And also putting in those sidewalks, actually, you know, the argument that cars are speeding, behind that is the idea that there's some safety issue involved. Safety, and people, the first thing people talk about is kids. The one thing that we do before we put in the speed bumps is put people off the road onto the sidewalk. Is that correct?
Yes, that's generally preferable.
And doesn't it become more unsafe if you put a speed bump in the middle of a road and there's no sidewalk, that the pedestrians who are walking on that street become more vulnerable to an accident?
Yes, that's generally our goal. If we're considering protecting pedestrians, our first option would be to get them off the traveled portion of the road.
So the only conclusion that you can come to then is we're trying to make things safer, but by not putting on a sidewalk and putting in a speed bump, by our own policy, if we follow our own policy, then we're actually making the road more, not more safe, less safe.
Yes, that's why we are in conjunction with the speed humps installing the sidewalk, not for the entire length of the street, but where there are on the frontage.
But there are a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. There are 20 houses too, and they don't all cover, on Brookfield, for example, they're not all in front of the park. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wong. Any other questions for staff? No? Councilor Robinson, what would you like to do here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, what I'm proposing is the alternate recommendations. And I just want to give you a little bit of the history. So, the decision not to put in sidewalks was made probably, and Christine, you can maybe shake your head, 10 to 12 years ago. This has gone on, like this has been a massive reconstruction. Like I think we're at phase 6 or 7. And so it's well before my time that these decisions were made by the community and the local councillor at the time, Councillor Jenkins. And so this has all been grandfathered in a sense. And I would say the public meetings for this, I've been at this 8 years. We're probably 10 to 12 years ago where all these decisions were made. So let's just clear the air on that. I think that's important. On this issue, I just want to start by saying that in my 8 years as a city councillor, I've only put in speed bumps on one street. That was Campbell Crescent, and it was 2 little speed bumps because of the infiltration from Yonge and York Mills. This recommendation has been the result of many, many meetings with transportation staff, particularly Sean Darsh, who's really looked at this closely. And why we've narrowed in on this is because we're on Denino, there's a park with playground equipment and well utilized, and we're simply asking there to install one lonely speed bump, one speed bump on Denino. The other street we're asking to put two 2 speed bumps on is Brookfield. Again, because it's a gateway street into Hogs Hollow. And again, it's alongside a very active, well-utilized park that runs along there, where you've just now heard about this formal path being constructed. So I want to, I understand the hesitation. At the same time, it was very well responded to. 78% on Brookfield, 100% on Denino. And the issue is we had a very narrow margin on the response rate. So when I was outdoor knocking this fall, I can't believe how many homes I came across in particular parts of the ward that were vacant. And I think the local association is right in saying this vacant home ownership issue in many parts of my ward, York Mills, there was literally one neighborhood, and I won't name it, that was more vacant than lived in. It felt like a ghost town. So that also is a problem in this neighborhood, vacant ownership, home ownership, and we feel that that skewed it along with the issues that Christine raised. So for that reason, and many others, safety, because I'm very, like Councillor Carroll, I'm very concerned about EMS and fire, et cetera. I share her concerns, but what we're asking for is 1 speed bump on Denino alongside the park and 2 speed bumps on Brookfield alongside the park. And that's why we've come up with this. And so that's why I'm asking for those alternate recommendations to be approved by North York Community Council on this issue, please.
All right, thank you very much. The alternative recommendations, I believe, are on the screen. They're being moved by the local
I have to make a comment. I just want to go on the record. And the reason I'm hesitating even to ask to be on the speakers list is I'm painfully aware. I remember Councillor Jenkins having this conversation. It was more about sidewalks at that time than anything, and refusing to have them. We had this bubble up in Councillor Jenkins' area, and also in another area in Scarborough that doesn't have a lot of sidewalks. And so it was on, so to speak, as a result of the policy coming in. But I have a great frustration with this. I have a street coming up. I'm going to be bringing it to you probably at the very next council session that, similar to this one, would meet the warrants to put in speed humps if you want to put in speed humps. But I'm painfully aware of the number of seniors and the number of times EMS is likely to have to speed through that area to get to North York General Hospital. And so what you'll likely see me bringing is a request first just to lower the speed limit to 30K, but not to put in the humps. That's what I will probably be bringing to you about Pineway Boulevard in a couple of months to see what that does. Because quite frankly, this isn't the only neighborhood like this. There's a neighborhood in East York called Parkview Hills that's similar to Hogs Hollow. It's sort of a one-way in, one-way out sort of isolated neighborhood. But it has beautiful long winding roads like this, all nestled in a place. But because it's in East York, it's in that downtown area where they simply said all local roads 30K. My grandchildren, because they were in French immersion, went to school in this fancy schmancy neighborhood for a few years. And it was constantly a problem. There aren't a lot of sidewalks because they're small East York streets, and every house has been monster home renovated. And suddenly there are a lot of kids walking along those streets. And people were very concerned until the 30K. I can't get over in the space of about a year what a change just changing the speed limit made. And that's a similar neighborhood to this in that particular in Parkview Hills Boulevard. There was a concert request dating back to the time when Dave Johnson was a councillor and then mayor, can we have some speed bumps here? They never did get them, but they got their speed limit reduction to exactly what will be required here with those humps. And people have stopped complaining. And there hasn't been a traffic fatality or I believe even an injury. And so, you know, I'd be more comfortable if we were doing this in steps. Let's put in the 30K, and if the hump is still needed, it can be done in conjunction with the the infrastructure, but if we're really concerned about the safety of the children and the safety of people inside an ambulance who might be on a ventilator at that moment fighting for their life, 30K helps everyone. Those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Councillor Keller. We have the...
Clarify, I think I was saying bumps and humps. I just want to make sure clear that they're humps. Sorry, I have a hard time.
Yes, no, okay.
Humps. I want to make sure
Humps,
that,
yes.
yes, that I was clear on saying humps.
All right, so the motion is on the screen. You're kidding. No. Councillor Menawong?
Just wants you to ask. It's the thought that counts.
Important because, these decisions have implications not only in the local councillor's ward, but they have implications in our ward. I was talking to my colleague, Councillor Cole. I said, if we do this, wait for, all the other streets that some councillors have been saying no to, that don't have sidewalks, because there is a very clear policy that putting in speed bumps where there are not sidewalks is unsafe. Staff say that, they believe it, they stand by it. Due respect to the local councillor, if she wants to change that policy, she should go to city council and change the policy and justify why it's safe to put in speed bumps where there are no sidewalks. I mean, it's fundamentally wrong to leave speed bumps where there are pedestrians, and it makes complete sense why that's the case. And if we say yes to this, we are making that street unsafe. And if there's, and you know what I think about that area? Now, I'm not as intimately knowledgeable about that area. I go in maybe a couple times a year to Hogs Hollow, but I think it's a fairly enclosed, isolated area. And I think by and large, if they're speeding on it, it's the neighbors that are speeding. And neighbors should talk, the residents should talk to their neighbors and say, don't speed on these streets. Right? This is not like there's a lot of, I don't think, Mr. Chairman, I don't think there's a lot of cut-through traffic. And so I think this is fairly self-contained. But I'm not going to vote, I have a street in my area where there are only curbs and there are no sidewalks. And I've told them, and they're not very happy about it. I've told them that, no, the city says they're unsafe because the first thing you do is you put the pedestrians on the sidewalk. You take them off the street. I actually think that this idea of they don't want these sidewalks because they're worried about the trees, I think that's a red herring. I think that most residents don't want sidewalks on their street because they're afraid that it's going to be on their side and they're going to lose use of their property. I mean, I know that to be true because I've heard it. I have another street in my area, Moccasin Trail, that has speed bumps that was put in before that policy was put in place, right? And we've got new development in there, and they want to, some people are talking putting in a new sidewalk, but the one thing that they don't want it on their side, right? And it's not about trees, but they'll pull that up if that's one thing that they can do to stop this. But this is fundamental. Apparently the local councillor talked to Sean Darsh. Well, what do we have? We have a recommendation here that says don't do it. That's the recommendation from our transportation staff. And in this case, I think we should follow it.
Okay. So, you'll move staff recommendations? Councillor... Yeah, so, Councillor Robinson, what would you like to do? Okay, they're on the screen? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That loses. Councillor Menawong, you're going to move the staff report? All those in favor? Oh. Oh. No. All those opposed? It is not. Yeah, there was no request to record it. We could, though, if you want to go back. You want to go back on both? Both? Okay. Okay, if we could redo the last one on a recorded vote. So, Councillor Minnan-Wong is moving the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Are you going to call them out? It's a recorded vote. Oh, do you want me to call them out? Yeah. Councillor Fillion, Councillor Minnan-Wong, Councillor Carroll.
That was Councillor Cole.
What did I say? The hair is the same, but Councillor Cole, Councillor Minnan-Wong, Councillor Carroll, and so those opposed. It's going to lose. It's going to lose on a tie. Okay, so of those opposed, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Fillion, and Councillor Pasternak. There's your recorded vote. It loses on a tie.
So that leaves you with no recommendations in the report?
So go to count.
I would like to move, is there still room to put a motion on the floor?
Gosh. What would you like to do with the item?
Is it in order to move that the speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour be installed? Is that in order?
Mr. Chair, just so the councillor is aware, it is a bit misleading the way the report reads, because I understand that it actually is, they're very keen to lower the speed limits in Hogs Hollow. There's no opposition to that, and I believe, if staff could just shake their head, it has been lowered, the speed limit has been lowered, and it's been signed 30K already. That's
So it's already 30K throughout?
Yes, in the fall, it was lowered to well, we did it, I think, at our last council meeting, or one of our last community council meetings, and the signs are up.
Oh, okay.
But it's misleading, because the alternate recommendations say otherwise. Yeah, so I'm not sure why they say that.
Okay, I do apologize for that.
Okay, so that item is just on delegated authority? It lost on its time. It's on delegated authority?
I know. It says it in the recommendations, too. I don't know
Okay,
why
we have
it
one
does,
more
but
item.
that-
Councillors, we have one more item. Item 23. I believe Councillor Minnan-Wong held it down. Item 23. I'm sorry. Okay. So, Councillor Carroll, you held this item down, but it's a memo from Councillor Minnan-Wong regarding a couple of recommendations. It's a report request and a study request.
That was me who held it down.
Yes, please. Councillor Carroll, what would you like to do with this item?
I would like to ask some questions of staff. I'm
Okay.
happy to have the study. I just want to ask some questions. Because this comes up, as far north as my ward is north of the 401, but this is a situation close to the Eglinton crosstown where traffic is being affected by the crosstown construction. And that's why this shortcut is happening. I want to confess to the local councillor right now, I've taken this very shortcut. I'm part of the problem. Because between my daughter and where my house is and where my grandchildren are is the crosstown. And it's a conspiracy to keep us apart. So I've resorted to this. But my question is this: we're going to see these cropping up. Perhaps they've already dealt with this in the West End where there's been more robust construction. We're heading into the robustness of it now. So are there planned traffic studies for the finished product? We're going to go through this. We're going to take a measure here. And I support doing this, doing the study that the local councillor's doing. My question is, what is the plan post crosstown completion? Is there a plan to go back, or there funds contemplated in the budget to go back and look at what now are the traffic patterns around this avenue?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't speak to that in detail. I believe there are plans on Eglinton itself. I would expect that, but with respect to the intersecting side streets and the impact, I don't know if that's been a consideration, but again, I don't have the full details.
Okay. The reason I raise it, and the reason this sort of made the hair stand up on the back of my neck, is a while back, I was asked to remind folks that while we want traffic studies of North-South Streets, Bayview, Leslie, Don Mills, it doesn't make sense to do them now. Councillor Shiner, in fact, put monies aside from developments to do it, but it didn't make sense to do them till the crosstown was complete. In your view, should we be making sure, as growth applications come forward all along this, should we be securing and setting aside the funds to be able to do massive traffic evaluation and possible amelioration after the crosstown is completed from whatever growth applications are resulting from it? Is there a pattern of doing that in the West, and should we be doing it now?
I cannot speak to whether it should be done. To my knowledge, I don't think that it has been done in the western portion.
Okay.
To my knowledge.
So this is perhaps an issue we should take to planning growth and whatever it is now. Okay, thank you.
Planning and housing.
Hey, that's right, I'm sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair, it's planning and housing now. That was my only reason for holding it. I wanted to know, because this study will likely be about the current situation, which is not normal. So I can support it, but I think we got to start planning for the aftermath as well.
Okay, item 23, we're ready to vote on it. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Just before we wrap up here, I'd like to just recognize Vicki Ratowski, Program Manager, Transportation Planning. I'd just like to say that this is her last meeting today. She'll be retiring after 32 years with the city, all at North York Civic Center. So she's contributed immensely to city building in North York over the last 32 years, and we thank her for her dedication certainly in Toronto and in North America. North York has been one of the most transformed city in a positive way over the years, and you have your positive fingerprints all over it, so congratulations and enjoy your retirement. Councillor Cole, you have a motion to introduce and enact certain bills.
Move that the North York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws bills 92 to 108, 185, and 212 prepared for the January 15th, 2019 meeting 2 of the Community Council. And I so move.
Shall these bills be passed and declared as a bylaw? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Robinson, you have a motion to introduce and enact the confirming bill.
I do. That the North York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the North York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 2 on January 15th.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.